climate and biodiversity.
Pause for a moment. Think about the food you eat today. Was it delicious? Think about the water you just drink. Did it satisfy your thirst? Think about the things around you and how they are built. How about the air you just breathe at the moment? Now let me ask you, did you know the sources of all these?
Hey, I bet you're here to learn. Come and join our exploration. Are you guys familiar with the words climate and biodiversity? These two are one of the most fundamental components of our planet Earth that help us humans to survive. Climate is the prevailing weather condition of an area for over a long period of time. It is associated with the temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, wind, rainfall, and other meteorological weather elements in a certain area of the Earth's surface. Biodiversity refers to the variety of animals, fungi, and even microbes such as bacteria that make up our natural world. Each of these species and organisms work together in an ecosystem to preserve balance and support life, much like an intricate web. These two components can't be separated because they are both intrinsically dependent on one another. That means what happens to the other affects the other as well. There is also a major environmental issue caused by humans' ecological footprint that occurs in our climate and links to our biodiversity. That is climate change.
How will the changes in climate affect the 5 major biomes of the Earth? And what approaches can we do to lessen these effects?
Climate change in aquatic system is strongly causing temperature rises, rising of sea levels, which will result in increased intensity of storm surge, flash floods, and serious damage to coastal areas. Changing in the ocean current system, melting of polar ice, migration of marine species to colder zones, and acidification of seawaters. This increase of seawater's acidification could damage the corals. On the other hand, the production of fish products will be disrupted as well.
Increased seasonal, yearly, minimum and maximum temperatures, as well as shifting precipitation patterns are all the effects of climate change on grassland and prairie bioregions. Dryness is the primary cause of changes on grassland, with increased wildfires, loss of wetland habitats such as prairie potholes, which are critical habitat for migrating bird species, as well as species movements and habitat shifts expected. The distribution of many plants and animals will move as climate change geographically because species must migrate long distance to compensate for temperature shifts.
Climate change could roughly affect and minimize the health and economic opportunities that we can incur into the forest ecosystem. This lead and result to migration of wild animals, insects outbreaks, wildfire, the chance of flash floods, and also it slowly downhill the wooden materials and disrupt the process of photosynthesis. These effects were identified through the changes of temperature, precipitation, and also the increase of carbon dioxide that can be found in the atmosphere.
Under the impact of climate change, desert is expected to become hotter and drier. These changes are likely to have strong impacts on the abundance and distribution of the region's animals and plant species. Global warming is increasing the incidence of drought, which dries out water holes, and higher temperature may produce an increasing number of wildfires. Desert plants, animals, and other organisms has to survive with harsh conditions of water scarcity, habitat destruction, and human disturbance, which results in land degradation, soil erosion, and loss of biodiversity.
Climate change effects in tundra regions have gotten a lot of attention from scientists, governments, and general public. This interest arises in part from tundra's high sensitivity to global warming trend. Many of plants and animals that have adapted to survive in cold. Dry tundras are threatened by climate change, as are many of the plants and animals that have adapted to live there. As soil bacteria transform carbon into carbon dioxide and methane, the dry tundras becoming the source of greenhouse gas emission.
Conservation and restoration marine habitats such as seagrass, salt marshes, and mangroves and related food webs. We also need to step back in global efforts to reduce overfishing, plastic waste, chemical pollution, and nutrient runoff. Proper regional planning and infrastructures can help coastal communities adapt to rising sea levels and the greater likelihood of storms, floods, and extreme events.
Humans must protect and restore wetlands, which are an important part of grassland ecology. Rotate agricultural crops to prevent the sapping of nutrients. Plant trees as windbreaks to reduce erosions on farm fields. Lastly, conduct controlled dry season burning to stimulate fresh plant growth and to restore calcium to the soil that builds up in the dry grasses.
People should know to apply mitigation adaptation, meaning the adjustive ways of the current and future effects of climate change, like reforestation, sustainability practices and use, strengthening adaptive capacity of trees and forests, especially to those areas that had been fragile, and lastly, strengthening coping strategies and maintaining environmental plans in the present time and in the future.
Be more efficient in using existing water resources and find new ways to rotate crops to protect the fragile soil and plants and fixing bushes and trees. Being careful and gaining more knowledge about these desert biomes will help organisms survive.
People must contribute to the preservation of tundra ecosystem in a variety of ways. Reduce or total prohibition of certain forms of industrial activity might help the native flora, lichens, and permafrost. The demand for tundra mining would be reduced if other energy sources were used instead of oil and natural gases. Switching away from fossil fuels will help to protect Earth's tundra habitats by decreasing dangerous climate warming pollution.
Climate change is happening because of us. Human activities are releasing excessive amount of greenhouse gases into our atmosphere. As a result, the globe is 1 degree warmer on average than it was before the Industrial Revolution. It brought damage to the different biomes of the Earth and the entire ecosystem in general. Not just that, it also affected human standard of living. We are in debt to our planet.